Thank you for listening to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast, available on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Stitcher. Also, please follow Matt's Movie Reviews on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Reddit, Instagram, and MeWe. And of course, be sure to visit mattsmoviereviews.net for the latest reviews, top 10 lists, and more. Now, on to the show.
And Sir arrived 10 days ago.
We the only ones out here?
Just us and our guests.
A cell in Europe has been trying to build a dirty bomb. We traced it to DC.
The detainees that come here do not depart until we've properly vetted.
Are you a mean man, Sawyer?
It's been a terrible mistake.
We screw up and one of these guys hurts the homeland, it's all over CNN.
Something's not right. On me.
Pulling back! Find him! We can get him inside!
Spartan 01, this is Phoenix Actual. We are under attack. He tells us where that bomb is, we can radio it in.
I am not a terrorist, please.
You stay here, we're gonna be overrun.
Come here, young one. This is not Benghazi.
Run low on ammo.
I know.
I need him to get answers.
If they want it, let them have it.
Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 383. Releasing November 5 across the US in theaters and on demand is One Shot, a one-take continuous shot action thriller that stars Scott Adkins as the leader of a Navy SEALs team that is tasked with transporting a suspected terrorist from a CIA Black Site Island prison. Things get very complicated when insurgents arrive hell-bent on getting their hands on the same man. Also starring Ryan Philippe and Ashley Greene, One Shot is an ambitious and engaging action thriller that features ferocious gun battles and an impressive display of filmmaking technique. And I'm glad to say joining me now is the director of One Shot, James Nunn. James, I thank you so very much for joining me today.
No worries. Thank you for the kind intro, and thanks for having me.
So reading up about the history of this film, it's interesting. You had the idea for this, 6-7 years ago. This was like before the one-take shot movie really had a bit of a resurgence with Birdman in 1917, etc. How did the idea come about? And is it true that working with Scott Adkins is kind of like the inspiration as to why you thought, you know what, maybe making a one-shot kind of movie could really work with this particular actor and with this particular genre?
Yeah, that's correct, Matt. So basically what happened is I'd made my second movie called Eliminators with Scott Adkins. My second movie with Scott, I should say. So we already had two great experiences, and it was the eve of wrapping that movie that I was with my producers, and we'd done a scene in that movie that was like a 2-minute fight sequence. And the amazing thing with Scott as a martial artist and sort of action star is that he can do all of this stuff. Like, he can fight very legitimately. He can make it feel very real. He can, have a fist a centimeter or millimeter away from your cheek without you even realizing. And he can do it in real time. He doesn't have to kind of stop and take a breath. In fact, he loves to do it in real time, and he loves to do it for a long time because, I think there's this thing with action guys where they're like, longer, harder, faster. I can do it. I'm the real deal. And knowing that about him and knowing my abilities as a director, and I come from a very technical background of filmmaking, I was really looking for a project and designing a project with Scott that would capitalize on my technical filmmaking ability and his technical fight ability on screen, I suppose, on-screen fight ability. And that was where the birth of One Shot came from. And because my producer said, well, what is that? And I said, well, I think it's a 90-minute movie where Scott just fights from beginning to end. And by the end of it, he's like completely knackered and just sweating and can't breathe. And the audience should just feel so immersed that they just watch this guy go through hell. And they said, well, it sounds really good. Why don't you go and write it? And that's where the idea was born.
You know, it took some time for the project to get off the ground. Do you consider that, looking back now, something of a mixed blessing? Do you need those additional years? Do you need advances in filmmaking technology, for example? Do you need more experience behind the camera to be able to tackle a project so ambitious like this one?
Yeah, I think it probably was a bit of a blessing. There were a few reasons that it just couldn't happen. At the time, Birdman hadn't actually been released. I'm sure it was in development, but it certainly wasn't out in the public conscious. So whenever I would approach people about it, everyone would be like, you're crazy. You can't do what the level of action and what you're talking about doing in one take, because it's just, well, it's dangerous. People are going to get too tired. We've never seen it done before, so we can't trust giving you the money. Like, what if it messes up? We can't edit it. So there was all these factors that were just prohibiting the movie from getting made. And in many ways, like actually Birdman coming out and then 1917 coming out were a blessing for One Shot, because it proved to people that it could be done. It proved that there was an audience appetite for this kind of thing. And it was the kind of like beginning of getting this project going again. So that's the one side of it. But yes, the other side of it is like the percolating of something in your mind for 6 years and the going away and making 3 more movies in that time, and like also growing as a filmmaker and a person about how you approach stuff. Like when I first came up with it, I was 29 and now I'm 36, and my views on politics and life, and I've watched probably 200 more documentaries on the war, since then. And all of this stuff factors in tonally to like how the movie gets made. So yeah, interestingly, like actually when it was very first pitched, it was much more like comic booky, much more kind of almost like Escape from New York on a prison island with cannibals and stuff. It was like really, because I needed that excuse for like Scott to just be able to have 200 guys to beat up with no weapons. And the only way I could do that at the time in my brain was to make it comic booky. And then, over this percolation of time and what, kind of audience understanding what audience want, and also growing as a filmmaker and understanding what the sales company might want as well, it got shifted into a much more serious angle. And it was the best note I ever got for the movie, because it really helped shape and design the intensity of what I wanted to make. I think it probably started as like quite a fun thing and became this much more intense emotional thing for the film and for me. So hopefully that answers the question. But yeah, it needed that time for sure.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by 80s Tees. 80s Tees is an online retailer of licensed t-shirts and pop culture gear from your favorite movies, TV shows, cartoons, video games, comic books, and musicians. Celebrate your inner 80s nerd and click on the link in the show notes below to get the raddest retro t-shirts delivered to your door. The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Loot Crate. Founded in 2012, Loot Crate is the worldwide leader in fan subscription boxes. Loot Crate partners with industry leaders in entertainment, gaming, sports, and pop culture to deliver monthly themed crates, produce interactive experiences in digital content, and film original video productions. No matter what you geek out about, Loot Crate has a subscription box for you. To get your very own exclusive collectibles, apparel, and gear delivered to your door, be sure to click on the link in the show notes below. The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is also brought to you by Vudu. Watch the latest movies and TV shows anytime, anywhere. No subscriptions, no contract. Enjoy stunning quality in up to 4K ultra high definition at home and download and watch on your mobile device as well. To rent and buy from over 100,000 titles or watch thousands of movies free with Vudu Movies on us, be sure to click on the link in the show notes below. Now, back to the show. It's such a logistical thing, I imagine, to create any film is, right? But doing like a one-shot continuous take kind of movie definitely would be. So how do you like to approach it in regards to preparation? Do you storyboard? Do you have time for rehearsal? Do you have anything like that at your disposal? So when you're ready to go, you're as prepared as you can be to try to get everything done at that day, at that moment.
Of course. Essentially I come from a film school upbringing, and then going to become a first assistant director in film. And I know I always make the movies in pre-production. I mean, you make the movie in pre-production, then you make the movie in production, and then you make the movie again in the edit. But right. I am a big fan of pre-production because once the more you think about it up front, by the time you actually get to production and when these other ideas are coming to you from either yourself or from actors or from other crew members, and you kind of, at least you've got your backstop of like how you initially wanted it and you're not floating around all these ideas. So I'm a big fan of pre-production, but you can't storyboard a one-shot movie because you just can't draw 90 minutes and explain to you could like to sit with the storyboard artist. I'd have to walk him around the location, pause, draw this frame, pause, draw this, and it would just be a complete waste of time. It would probably take longer than to actually shoot the movie. So what we actually did was 3 weeks out from shooting the movie, I went down to the location with a GoPro, two stand-ins, and my first assistant director. And I just worked out the path, and I worked out where I was going to do shots and things like that, so that once the crew started coming in 2 weeks before production, I could then go, right, watch this version of the movie. It's terrible and it's shot on a GoPro and it's got Bill and Bob running around with toy guns, but it's the skeleton of the movie. And that then just grew and became more of a thing and more tangible as the weeks went on, because then the second week out, all of my fight crew came down and all of my stunt guys came down, and I did exactly the same thing, and I'd go around and I'd shoot the movie with them. So then I'd go home at night and I'd cut that section into the skeleton section, just sort of adding these muscles, if you will. And then 1 week out from production, I was allowed all of the cast for rehearsal. All of the cast came down, and the first day I showed them the movie, like the walkthrough, and walked them through the set and talked it all through on the Monday. And then on the Tuesday, we got into rehearsals and we started rehearsing everything. And I was like, okay. And then that obviously influences the camera a little bit as well. And I'd record it on the GoPro, so that literally by the end of that week, the weekend, like the Friday before the Monday, the big day, I had like an 80-minute version of the movie in a very bare bones level, but I was able to chart pace and acting and like emotion and like, oh, we need to fight. I need to put some violence in here, or I need to put a gunshot here, or I need to like, how do I keep it exciting here? So essentially I'd kind of done like a edit of the movie before shooting it, because then by the time once you actually shoot the actual footage, you obviously can't cut it, because that's what it's going to be and that's how it's going to live, unless we change the whole conceit of the project, which is it's no longer a one-shot movie. It's just jumping through time. So yes, to answer your question, it was made in pre-production, and you'd need to. You couldn't just turn up and achieve. Well, maybe you could. Maybe if you're an absolute genius, you could. But I certainly couldn't just turn up, shoot the long days we were doing, and like hope for what we achieved. Like it everything was considered, and there would be little surprises on the day, which are great and I cherish, and you need those, but you wouldn't have even got those if you hadn't rehearsed it a week before, because I'd have spent all my time I'd have spent half the day rehearsing and then half the day shooting, whereas it's like I'd kind of been able to relieve not just pressure off myself, but pressure off the cast. And I think that was actually one of the reasons that they were able to kind of really bring their A game to this project, is because they knew exactly their whole journey throughout the film, and they knew exactly through rehearsals kind of like what to do. So it wasn't like nobody turned up and messed up a line, because everyone knew what they were going to say. And then also because the pressure was so high on the day of like, you don't want to be the person that messes up this extremely long take, that everybody was just so switched on and so focused with not messing up, that it really kind of keeps this level of intensity in the film that I perhaps hadn't even imagined that we'd been able to achieve. But you can kind of see it in them, and you can kind of see it in the camera work as well. And hopefully that answers the question.
It did, yeah. Thank you very much for that. This is your third film with Scott Adkins. It's really interesting. On the same day that I watched One Shot, I don't know how this came about. That night I watched An American with Paris, the musical with Gene Kelly. And it really kind of confirmed a theory I have about action choreography, that it's kind of like akin to musicals. There's a physicality, there's rhythm, there's kind of like the pacing, etc. And, with that in mind, Scott Adkins has to be the Gene Kelly of the action world. I truly, really believe that. I mean, he's just so good at what he does, and that's how he comes about and does it. You've worked with him like 3 times now. Is that something that you agree with, that kind of comparison there?
I think that's an awesome sentence. He's going to love that. You need to Twitter that to him right now. The Gene Kelly of action films. And I don't disagree with you. Yes, what Scott can do with his body and with his ability is something else. It's mind-blowing. There are obviously been other incredible martial artists throughout the years. Bruce Lee, Tony Jaa, Keanu Reeves, like lots of people can do this amazing stuff. But certainly for me, Scott's sort of ability shines the brightest. And it's not only his technical ability and his skill and his education, but it's also his mindset and his work ethic. He works incredibly hard. He wants to be the best. And to even take on a challenge like this, it's now something that he can say he's the first kind of martial artist, on-screen fighter, action star to do this kind of like style of movie. So I think it's a nice bucket list achievement for him as well, because these action guys love to be able to do like a long take fight, but to be able to do a long take movie that is like also got drama and emotion, and not just fighting, but gunfighting and some stunt work and explosions. So it was a big tick off for him. And I suppose he is the Gene Kelly of action, certainly by today's standards. And with regards to rhythm, he's a human special effect. He's a gymnast. He's got great timing, but every good guy needs a villain. And we also made sure we cast the correct people for him to scuffle with, to have fights with, because it'd be no use giving him someone who wasn't the same speed. Scott's incredibly fast. And the reason that you can hold on a long take fight with Scott is because of his speed. But if I had someone very slow and sluggish, it would just look so bizarre, because he'd be whooping their ass, but they'd have to be acting, or they'd be punching really slow. And so every good guy needs a great bad guy. And we also we worked really hard to make sure that the fights that Scott had in the movie felt that way. And equally, like, there's this guy called Lee Charles. I've been working for him for 10 years, who Scott has a fight with. And they've done, I think, 6 on-screen fights together over the last 10 years. And because of that, they trust each other. So they're able to move at incredible speeds with each other, because they know at the end of the day, if they're going to connect or something like that happens, they're just going to handshake and walk away and be like, oh, gotcha. Sorry about that. They're going to take it very professionally. They've got a great level of trust. And because of that, and because of that casting, we were able to really sell those fights So yeah, it's I don't disagree with you, man. He's the best.
Well, look, I really enjoyed One Shot. And yeah, I love watching Scott Adkins just in general, because you know he's going to bring it. And especially great when he can team up with a director who just really knows how to utilize his skill. And I think what you've done, James, working with you for 3 times now, and what you've done, especially done with One Shot, you really have utilized his skills to such a degree that, I like to think that, his wish for longer takes would have been very fulfilled by the end of the shooting of that movie, because you could just tell that he's just spent at the end of it. And and maybe after that he wouldn't want to do a long take again. He's like, I've done it for 90 minutes. I'm good, mate. But that's really cool. And I can't wait for people to watch this film, because I think it's just really terrific. I get a lot of films sent my way and to watch. And I love action movies, and to watch an action movie like yours is just terrific. So for everyone out there listening, One Shot, November 5, out in the US, in theaters and on demand. I recommend everyone check this film out, because if you like your action movies as kick-ass and as visceral as I do, this is the movie to watch. And James Nunn, I thank you so very much for your time today. Congrats with the film, and hopefully we can talk again in the future. I know you've got some more projects coming out, and I'd love to talk to you again about those when those come out.
Absolutely, Matt. Thank you so much for your time, and thanks for championing the movie. We all love it, so we're glad that people are responding well, and I hope all your fans like it as well. And yeah, let's make some more. Let's do this again.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content. Also, if you would like to request a review and support my work, please join my Patreon via the link in the description below.